Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mind Your Mission. This month on the podcast, we've been talking all about direction, where God is leading us, how he shapes our course, and what it looks like to follow him faithfully in each season. And if you've heard any part of my story, then you know that getting pregnant by surprise and becoming a mom for the first time completely changed my direction in the best way possible. And because pregnancy, birth, and motherhood have shaped my path so deeply, it felt like a perfect time to bring on someone who walks closely with women through those very transitions. So today I'm so excited to welcome my doula, Emily, to the podcast. Emily's journey into birth work began several years ago when she became pregnant with her oldest. And like so many of us, that season opened her eyes, everything from pregnancy to birth to those sacred first moments of motherhood. And she dove headfirst into the world of all things baby and fell in love. After leaving her corporate job, Emily decided to follow the calling to help other women experience the God-given joys of motherhood. She completed her certifications and stepped into birth work as a doula professionally. Now she pours her heart into serving mothers, babies, and families by offering education, support, and truly informed care. Emily is passionate about helping other women understand their options, feel confident in their choices, and bond with their babies. So I'm so grateful to have her here today to share her wisdom, her story, and her heart for mothers. So Emily, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Erin. It's an honor. This is definitely a first for me in my birth work career. And I feel so blessed that you came into my life because this is just such an awesome opportunity to be able to talk to you about all of this and just share all the incredible things that have happened in my motherhood and birth work journey and just talk to you about what it's like to be a doula.
Yeah, I am super excited too. Not only like because I'm going to personally benefit from it, but also because so many people in our audience are either young mothers or in the college, high school season of life, and they want to be mothers one day. So I'm just really excited. One, that you changed my perspective on a lot of things birth wise, and you're like half the reason why I even decided to have a home birth in the first place.
I love that you did
But
it.
I'm also just so excited for those women who are in like earlier seasons of life to have some of this insight earlier on than I did. I think it'll be really encouraging and empowering for them. So for those of people that are listening and don't know what a doula is, could you explain what a doula is and how you found yourself called to this role?
So I don't want to really give like a blanket definition because I tell all my clients, and I'm sure I said it to you, like doula support is not one size fits all. So like we can provide physical support, emotional support, mental, spiritual, even. And so, like, I want to say that if you're looking for somebody to hold your hand and mother the mother, and be able to help you find resources, empower you to to advocate for yourself and your baby, and to be able to kind of walk you through this experience, then a doula is the right person for you to bring into your birth space. It's definitely a very intimate experience. So when you have this thought, and I'm not going to lie, like you talked a little bit about like my experience, I had a doula with my oldest, and I was a little hesitant at first to kind of bring that person in that space, but I just got so attached to her and she really just knew what to do and when I needed it because you can't wear both of those hats at the same time, right? Like you can do all the prep work in the world, but when you have a doula there, she can hold your hand in ways that you didn't know you needed, you know? And so I do think that, it's a lot about education and preparation and advocacy being in the doula space. You want to be able to support your clients so that they can have the birth that they envision. And at the end of the day, my goal is always to help moms have the most positive birth experience possible.
Yeah, thank you for that overview. I would say when I was pregnant with our first, my sister was going to be there, and obviously my husband was going to be there, and my sister's a nurse, and I felt very equipped for birth, I thought. And I thought that that birth team was going to be enough, but neither my husband or my sister had ever seen birth before. So after our first kind of crazy birth experience, me and my husband knew, regardless of if we had to pay out of pocket, regardless of any questions, we knew we needed somebody else there who was experienced in birth. That's really important. And I think kind of a tradition that might be lost in our society, just like bringing other women in who have experienced birth before and who have coached women through it. I didn't know I needed it going into my first birth, but I think that first pregnancies, especially, like that's a key time to have a doula. And then I wanted to ask you, because I don't know that I actually know this myself, what first convinced you to have a home birth?
So, speaking of like community, having women around you, witnessing birth and experiencing all that. Like, I am so blessed because I have a big family. My mom is one of five. There's like 16 great grandchildren. My grandmother, this May, June, and July, will welcome her 15th, 16th, and 17th great grandchildren. So it's like nonstop babies over here. But I'm very fortunate that I have the mother that I do, because from a very early age, she always included me in things. So it was like very much like, let's have a conversation about your body. And like, this is what's normal and not normal. And, don't be afraid to talk to me about things. And so I'm 12 years older than my younger sister. And so I did not, I'd always kind of been obsessed with baby stuff. Like, I remember being a little girl and like, oh, I'm going to write out how to deliver a baby, like, doodling little instructions on Post-its, like young. And so then when my mom got pregnant with my sister, she would take me to her doctor's appointments. I got to see the ultrasounds. So back in the day when you put the VHS tape in the machine to record the video of the baby. Like, it was just wild. And so when she actually gave birth to my sister, it was the first time I got to see a live birth, and I was 12. And I got picked on when I went back to school. They were like, you saw your mom's vagina? And I was very like, no, I got to see my sister be born. Like, I knew what it was then. And so I definitely feel like having my mom, and then breastfeeding, same thing. Like, she was very much like, look, this is what it's like. I would ask her what it felt like for the baby to kick. Like, she was always just so open and willing to include me in that. So that was my first experience with birth. Got obsessed with like TLC Birthday. Do you remember that show? Years ago. It was a show on TLC and it was called Birthday. And they would have like the crunchy moms, and they would have their intervention free, unmedicated births, water births. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I'm liking this more and more. And then I was actually in college and I took developmental psych at AACC, and I went to Special Beginnings for a tour. It was part of the class when it was still open. And I was like, this is it. So when I got pregnant with my oldest, I knew I wanted a midwifery model of care. I knew I wanted a physiological birth. I didn't quite know exactly how to get there yet, and it took us a while to get pregnant. So I was kind of more focused on conception and then changed gears. But I didn't want to necessarily do Special Beginnings with my first, because I was like, maybe I want to be closer to a hospital. This is an intense experience. What kind of resources do I want available? And luckily, the hospital in Annapolis still had a birth center. So I had my first birth there, and it was an incredible experience with the midwives there. But then that shut down at COVID. So my choices, and so did Special Beginnings. So my choices were then home or hospital. And once you go through that experience the way I did at a birth center, there's no going back. And so I just went full speed ahead with a home birth. So I had my first home birth in 2021, and then I just had my second home birth in 2024. And I wish every woman could experience it that way, because it's beautiful. We talked about like the high you're on after.
Yeah.
And like, once you do it, like my oldest was born, I was like, oh, I'm never doing it again. That was so hard. Had my middle son, and I was like, I'm going to do this 1,000 times.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's one of the first things I said after, like, giving birth to Haven was, "I'm never going back to a hospital again."
Yeah, you did.
Like,
You did.
why would anyone wanna go through that?
Why?
Yeah.
It's so, it's just such a different experience. My mom was actually there for my youngest son, and she has only ever had babies in hospitals and hadn't been present for my older two. So when she got to witness home birth firsthand, she was just like, it was incredible. Like, it was just so different. And she's like, now that I know all these things with you, I wish I had done some things differently. So it's like just having the opportunity to witness that firsthand. It's just so miraculous. And yeah, I was sold. I was 19 years old and convinced that I was going to have a natural birth. And so when I finally got to that point and seeing what my choices were, it was just like, there was no turning back at all. And home birth, and now I'm like hooked, home birth junkie.
Right.
Love it.
Yeah, so for those who don't know what that term means, physiological birth, can you explain, like, what's the difference between that and a managed, like, intervention heavy birth?
So physiological birth is truly just allowing birth to happen as God intended it to. Like, your body was designed to trigger labor once baby releases certain, we'll call them like proteins. They essentially are proteins. Once baby releases this signal to your body, and it's just this, ripple effect, and you don't step in to do constant monitoring. There's no augmentation or induction of any kind. We're just kind of stepping back and letting the body do what it was designed to. We're not breaking your water, and we're letting you labor in your most comfortable state, which at home is like a beautiful place to let this happen because a lot of times the first intervention is leaving your house. So you're in this very comfortable state laboring your baby down, and then you have to get in the car and drive to the hospital. And the drive can be nerve wracking, and then the change of scenery. The hospital's like bright and just sterile and kind of cold. And that physiological birth is just very much trusting your body and your baby to do what they were designed to, versus a managed birth where you're going to have doctors more facilitating the process and encouraging things along, possibly. But generally, you're going to see a lot of interventions and management things in a hospital setting. It's definitely a little harder to have a physiological birth in hospital. It's not impossible. Like if you have the right care team, it can be done. It's just you're in a hospital for a reason, right? Like they're expecting to do things a certain way. The physiological birth is really just, letting your body do what's intuitively, like what is it is intuitively trying to
Mm-hmm.
do.
Yeah.
You're not tracking every contraction and heartbeat,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which can give you anxiety. Like, I just
Yeah.
feel like a lot of moms cannot stand that beeping. Like, I'm sure we'll get more into this as we proceed, but like the mental game that birth is and how that can be very prohibitive. Like you're trying to peacefully welcome your baby into this world, but you're listening to every beat and they're coming in and checking you and pricking you and trying to do all this blood work. And so physiological birth is just focusing on allowing our God-given anatomy and physiology to work together with baby to produce this most positive birth outcome.
Yeah,
Probably.
I'd say from the very beginning, well, I'll say the very end of pregnancy and the very beginning of labor, everything was just so much simpler. Yes, I had to like know when to call you and when to call the midwives, but other than that, like logistically, there's just not much that I have to worry about other than, I mean,
Welcoming your
worry.
baby.
There's not really anything I need to worry about. It's just trusting my body at that point. And like you mentioned, that going in the car even is an intervention, especially with an induction with my first. Just you're not set up well from the start. I
Yeah.
feel like in a hospital, and some women, I understand like why you do feel safer in that environment. I can get that, but I think that the environment of a hospital impacts women more than they realize sometimes. So another question I have for you is: when you look at birth physiologically, where do you see God's intentional design most clearly?
I loved this question on the list because I was just like, I have to pick one thing. I mean, for starters, you have a human being growing inside a human being.
Of
You
course,
just
yeah,
think about like, just like literally, we're talking Genesis, like just creation in and of itself. Like, this is just miraculous to see like this design and how it's perfectly placed to fit inside of your organs and things move out of the way. And like, it's just, and your blood volume increases and your blood pressure lower. Like, all of these fine-tuned are calibrating to allow you to grow this baby. So like that right there, like is
yeah,
just wild. But I feel like I mentioned, about like the birth process, right? Like baby releases the protein, and I can give like a little background. Our bodies carry the baby, and it's not our bodies that trigger labor. So when labor starts, without any augmentation or intervention, it's because baby's lungs have matured enough that they release a surfactant protein. And that protein then triggers the events that lead to the onset of contractions. And contractions are caused by oxytocin, which is the love hormone. And so it's like the hormone that put baby in gets baby out. The way the baby goes in is the way the baby comes out. Like it's just, you think about that, like the beginning and the end, the alpha and omega, like all of these. You ever look at that like rainbow image of the Bible and how everything is so interconnected, all of the verses.
mm-hmm.
Like I think about that when I think about birth and how everything is just so interconnected. But, just how oxytocin is designed so perfectly with all of these physiological birth processes, and it's called the love hormone. And, God is
Mm-hmm.
love. Like you think about how he built pain management into oxytocin so that we can effectively manage our labors. And a
Yes,
little fun fact about that too, Pitocin that augments labor is the synthetic version. It does not cross the brain. So you don't get any natural pain relief
yeah,
from Pitocin that you would from oxytocin, which you experience that firsthand with your induction.
mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah,
you know, for physiological birth with no intervention, there's there's some pain management built into the mechanism, and that love hormone. Like, I just feel like that is just, I'm always learning new things that just amaze me, and I just see how like God put his little signature on all of these, so like incredible things that our bodies do. But that right there is just very telling. And to kind of expand on that, like talking about how baby gives the signal, right? And it's all about kind of like giving yourself up to God and trusting him and his plan. And you are already taking a back seat when it comes to your birth. Like, you are literally not in control at all. Your body doesn't even tell you when to start labor. It's your baby and it's God's plan. And so that also is just like so telling about like his design, and just, it's just so divine. I really, the best way I can think to describe it is divine, because it just is like, it's otherworldly when you
Yeah.
think about it.
Yep.
It's just so cool.
Exactly. Yeah, you mentioned that we're not in control. And as you know, one of the things that I tried to focus on in pregnancy and throughout labor was just the surrender aspect, because I feel like that was the key, the big key thing that I was missing in my first birth. Is just in the birth world, you talk about the fear, tension, pain cycle, which for those of you who don't know, when you have fear, your body's going to be more tense and you're going to feel more pain, versus the trust, relax, allow cycle. When you trust, you're going to relax, and then like your body's going to do what it's meant to do. Like, just that part of it. When I focused on surrender versus, like, yes, there's physical things that you can do to prepare, the raspberry leaf tea, the dates, like all those things. But more than that, when you just surrender it and allow and understand, I feel like there's a level of education that is really helpful to be able to understand what your body's doing, because the more that you understand what God's design is, then you can better support the natural design, which is like the whole concept of this podcast that we have, is just like looking back at the word of God and seeing like what his original intent was, because that surrender aspect just totally changed the game for me completely.
Well, we had that
So,
conversation. We were sitting on your couch one day, and I was like, when
yeah.
you have a hospital birth, you are surrendering to the providers in the hospital. But when
Mhm.
you have a baby at home, you're surrendering to your body and to God. And I just remember you being like,
Yeah.
because it hits you when you finally realize that, but it's hard to do that. I mean, we're human. Like,
Mhm.
we are flawed, and like that's why we have Jesus, and like it's incredible that we are in the position we are and have this relationship with God, but it is really hard to get out of your own way sometimes. And birth is, you're a mother, you care. From the moment you see that positive test, you're doing everything in your power to try to do what's best for your baby, and your birth is no different. But when you really realize like you're just a passenger to that, and you can be active in that, like you mentioned, the teas and the dates, and there's a lot of prep. But when it comes time to do it, your baby knows birth better than you do.
Yeah.
Like, they make
Yeah,
those twists
for
and
sure.
those turns, and it's just incredible. Like when you felt Haven like move toward the end of labor, like it's wild, but they do. She made that flip because she knew that, okay, this is the last thing I got to do to
Yes.
get out of here. Peace out.
Yeah, you communicating that, like, I have that moment on video, and it's super cool to look back at. And what just another plug for doulas in general, what was super cool in that moment is that you were able to communicate with me what was happening physically in my body to what I was feeling, and to be able to piece all of it together, the physical, the mental, the spiritual, like that to me is what made it, like, that's what makes birth such a life-changing experience. Is just you feel in a tangible way your surrender, God's control, but yet you're a part of that. We're just a vessel, you know? And
Yes. Oh, I
it was
say
just
that
so
all the
cool, that
time.
moment.
You are
Mhm.
just a vessel,
Yeah.
a divine
Yep.
vessel. I mean, how
Yeah.
blessed are we? Like, I'm just
Yes. It's a
to
yeah, I feel
like, he could have chosen any other way to do it, but he picked like
mhm.
us as women to be able to
Yeah.
grow these tiny, sweet, wonderful babies that are just like angels on
Mhm.
earth. I mean, nothing better than snuggling a newborn. It is heaven on earth, in my opinion. Like, oh, it's the
Yep.
best. So I could go on about all day, clearly, but it's
So you
awesome.
touched on this when you kind of explained the oxytocin aspect, like oxytocin versus the synthetic pitocin. Why do you believe natural or low intervention birth can be so beneficial for moms and babies?
Okay, so I think the easiest way to answer this would just be that the less you put in your body that's foreign and requires a recalibration, the better off you're going to be. But Going back to oxytocin and the benefits that it has, like you think about like how much better the outcomes are going to be for mom and baby when you allow oxytocin to do its job, right? Like there's a decreased risk of postpartum depression, a decreased risk of postpartum hemorrhage, a smoother respiratory transition for baby, easier breastfeeding initiation when you follow that physiological birth process. And I'm not saying that you can't have that when there's an intervention. It's just another hurdle you have to overcome because you've added in all these other players to the game, right? So when you have this physiological birth process that continues into that post-birth era because you want to have your skin to skin and breastfeeding, relationship with your baby, that oxytocin is just he's he's the driver when it comes to so many
Yeah.
of these processes. And so if you allow oxytocin to do its job, you put baby skin to skin right after birth, they're, regulating their temperature, their respiration, all of these things. And then your body's like, okay, placenta, get that out of here. Let me start the milk making process. Well, the next phase of the milk making process, because you already have colostrum at birth. But, and then that positive feedback loop is also driven by oxytocin with breastfeeding. So you have the fetal ejection reflex with oxytocin and the milk ejection reflex with oxytocin. And it's just like, again, letting that natural process happen as it was designed to, so that you're not trying to work against other systems. Like your liver is able to function as it was intended to function because it's not filtering out medications and other things. And, you're not overcoming some sort of trauma. So mentally, there's not a block and all of those things. But I just think that, the beautiful part about natural birth is that it preserves God's design and all these safeguards that he
Mhm.
put in place, right? Like delayed cord
Mhm.
clamping, for
Yeah.
example. Like they always worry about baby's ability to get oxygen, in terms of like, oh, they're a nuchal or whatever. And I'm not saying that that's not a valid concern, but, I had a baby with a nuchal and he came out kind of floppy, but he is thriving now at 16 months old, no issues whatsoever, because I let those stem cells continue to pump to him and he got every bit of that nourishing, incredibly dynamic, blood from the placenta after his birth. No one was rushing him. Like, if you don't mind me kind of talking about you with Haven, you had that moment where she took a minute to kind of come to
Mhm.
when she
Mhm.
was born. And I've had two babies like that, two water births, and they just take a little longer. And it's very normal. But you said, I never worried because she was in my arms. Intuitively, you knew that's the
Mhm.
best place for her to be, on your chest. And she was still
Mhm.
attached to your body. There was no fear. And so I do think like that's why it's so beneficial for moms. You just start off on, such a lighter foot.
Mhm.
I don't want to sit here and like
Yeah.
diminish other experiences, but it's just a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many things that even like after birth, I've realized were benefits of having a natural birth. Like I was talking to my friend who also just had a baby. And I was telling her, I was like, yeah, I don't know why. Like my first baby, I had really bad night sweats and all this stuff. And she said something along the lines of, well, you didn't have to sweat out all of the bad chemicals that were pumped into your body. And I was like, just little things like that that I've realized, wow, it's just better. Like I'm not the expert on this stuff, so I can just say it silly like that. It's just better.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I have to
But I
say.
mean, simply put,
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
I have a cousin, she just had her fifth baby, just to share like a comparison. And so she had IUGR, which is intrauterine growth restriction, with her first two pregnancies. And it's not like always a thing, but, she had that two times in a row. They schedule induction because essentially, like, there's evidence to suggest that like the baby's not going to thrive in utero, so let's get them out so they can continue to grow. And it has to do with the placenta too and all these things. And again, not an expert there. But both of those inductions, she had Pitocin and had an epidural, and then ended up with a shoulder baby for baby number two. And shoulder dystocia is when the baby's shoulder gets stuck on the pelvic bone coming out. And so sometimes in order to get them out, they have to break the clavicle, and it can be, stat situation, right? An emergent issue. But she was given Pitocin and it was augmented, and sometimes baby doesn't come down in the perfect spot. So she has baby numbers 3 and 4, again with Pitocin, but opts out of the epidurals, two more shoulder babies. And she was like, they pretty much told me if I'm going to have a fifth that I need to plan for a C-section because of the risk of shoulder. She said, but I've never had a birth without Pitocin, and I'm going to try to avoid it this time. And do you know that baby
Mm,
number 5 comes along? She does not get any Pitocin. She didn't have an epidural. She got up to go pee, started squatting down. Next thing you know, baby Eden is born without any issue. And I just love that her name is Eden and
wow.
that it was just like that
Yeah.
blissful. But she's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had no shoulder issues because I was able to intuitively
Wow.
birth my baby and there was no augmentation to push her into a position where she didn't need to be. So it's
Yeah.
just like when you think about
Amen.
that, and there's a time and a place, right? Like, absolutely. I'm not anti hospital birth. I'm not anti augmentation or induction, and I'm not anti cesarean. I just think let's reserve those things for when they're truly necessary. And a lot of times they're not. It's just like the world that we live in now, especially in like our culture here in the States. Like, let's get these babies out.
Right. Right.
The business of being born, if anybody wants to take a deep dive
Well,
into.
yeah. When I did you know I watched that documentary the night before Haven was born? Like that night we had stayed up
I think
watching
you
that
did
in
actually
bed, and
mention
then
that,
that's
but
when I
like
was feeling contractions. And
irony.
yeah, and it was pretty hilarious. One thing that was crazy to me in that documentary is that like I think it mentioned that a lot of doctors, like OBs, like may have never actually seen birth naturally before. Like
Or
that
seen a
just like
physiological birth.
that would change everything for that. I would hope like if they were to see like a home birth or something like that, I feel like that would cause them to ask questions. And that's I think what I'm most passionate about is just for women to be curious, to have some healthy curiosity and question the norm a little bit on the birth world. Once you kind of do some research and learn about the natural design, it's not as scary as a lot of women like see it as, I think.
Like our culture, it's in the movies. They're screaming bloody murder and it's horrifying and no one's connecting with their babies and just like trusting their
Mhm.
body. It's all
Yeah.
fear-based. So what do you expect? And just talking about, you know, when you think, oh, well, this is the norm, but it wasn't the norm 100 years ago. Like most of our well, my grandparents, we're close enough in age. It's probably similar that like I'm still 25 in my head. Okay. But like thinking about like grandparents, they were born at home. It's only in like the most recent generations that we've really made this shift. Like the 1900s really started to take a shift to hospital-based birth. And, just because that's what's worked for those that many years doesn't mean it needs to stick.
Mhm.
It's definitely a cultural thing, being exposed to birth and like not seeing it as something that's meant to be feared, educating yourself and being comfortable asking those questions. Cause I think too often in our society, we just blindly trust doctors and medical professionals. And I think, in recent years, people's eyes are really opening to the risks of doing that.
For
And
sure.
but I think like just birth is of all the things that you're going to question, that should be the one. Like, this is your body and your baby, and God gave you the authority over these children. And if He trusts you to be their mother, then you need to make the best decisions by them and trust that He has His hand on you through the whole process, right? Like,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
just kind of crazy to think that people just, okay, well, I guess this is it. I'm gonna, go to the
Mhm.
hospital and they're gonna force me to have my baby. And
Mhm.
again, necessary in certain circumstances, but we shouldn't just blindly accept that. Always ask
Yeah.
questions. Ask
Yeah.
for
For
evidence,
sure.
ask for information to support those choices that you are being forced to make?
Mhm. Yeah. And then take it a step further and go look at God's word because it'll talk about his design, like we talked about at the very beginning. Like, you knit your baby together in your womb. Like, it's very intentional. So, there been any moments with clients that you've had that have stood out to you and moments that you've witnessed that have strengthened your belief in the natural birth plot?
I mean, all of it. Like to watch a baby be born again,
Yeah.
and I was 12. And like a little backstory about
Hmm.
me, if you don't mind, because I do think like giving testimony is so important, like for
For
our
sure.
relationship with God and, the Great Commission. I feel like looking back at my life, I turned my back on God for 2 decades. I grew up in a church. When I was 12 years old, I got baptized. And that Easter Sunday was the last day that I went to church for over 20 years. And oddly enough, and I had this aha moment like prepping for this podcast with you, 3 weeks later, my baby sister was born. It was the first birth I ever witnessed. And coming full circle, it brought me right here, right now with you, right? But I think about being separated from God for all that time. And I still always knew how much value there was in creation. Like, I wasn't giving credit to him, even though I should have been, but I knew just how miraculous it was, right? And so all of these things that happened in my life that like led me back to him, and how I see just the little nudges, like the Holy Spirit's just doing this work, and like gently, 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 until one day it wasn't gentle anymore and he had to leave the 99 because he's like, it's time. Like, you need to stop playing around. Like, I've done all the little subtle things I can. And I just think, like, 3 weeks after, I remember, like, this is the last day I went to church. I wasn't actively saying I'm never coming back, but that was the last time. And 3 weeks later, my sister was born and I got to witness his miracle. And I still was
Yeah.
just like, just wandering around, right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think when I'm in the room with those mamas and I watch them, I don't want to say endure, but you are enduring it in some capacity. It's very intense to give birth and to
Mhm.
labor, but I watch like the love that they share with the people around them and the hope that they have, and just how I have so many mamas. I just had a mom had a baby. It ended with a C-section, which was not her plan at all. And I felt sad for her because I know there's a grief component that comes along with any change in a birth plan. She was breastfeeding her baby for the first time and she's just down at him. And I'm having the same thought. She's like, how can you see this and not believe in God? And it's just like, how
Yeah.
could you? So I wish that there was like one specific moment I could give that would make my answer so profound, but it's just everything. Like, once you get to witness a birth, and a birth that's not your own. So like, I think that was
Mhm.
really pivotal for me, is that these women welcome me into their birth space and I laugh with them and I cry with them and I hold them. Like, I hug and kiss mamas on their foreheads like I'm their mom. Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? I don't I
Yeah.
dive in, I'm like, shh, shh, like they're my baby. And I don't know that
Yeah.
everybody loves that, but like, I can't help but to want to nurture them. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of silly, but it's also just like, that's just where my heart is. Like, I just want to hold
Yeah.
them and let them know it's going to be okay. And I
Mhm.
just think it's just so incredible to see all of these things, and like, like the tree of life on the placenta. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
literally a tree with roots, and this is where your baby is rooted in your womb. I mean,
Mm.
I don't have specific moments from like any individual birth, but I do
Mhm.
have just this collection of beautiful memories that just solidified. Like, I'm so glad that, I found my way back to him so that I could truly
Mhm.
appreciate what this is and what I get to do, because, walking away from him for that many years, and I get emotional about it still, like, life would have been so much easier, but he gives us trials to strengthen us, right? And so like, I know that that was part of his plan. He dropped those little, what do we call them, Easter eggs.
Mhm.
After that day I got baptized, when my sister was born 3 weeks later, like, that was my Easter egg. It was like, I was
Yeah.
hooked and I knew I was going to end up here. And I just, like, one of the things you see, like when baby's head starts to come out, and I'll never forget the first time I witnessed this, their soft spot comes out first. So I
Mhm.
remember seeing my sister being born and thinking, her head is so tiny, something's wrong,
Mm.
because it
Mhm.
was so little. And then it just pops together.
Yeah.
And like, that's just wild. So
Mhm.
I've had some
Mhm.
dark moments in rooms with mamas, and I spend a lot of time praying over my moms, and if I have to
Mhm.
stand on the sidelines, I spend a lot of time praying, and I'm very fortunate that, even if things haven't gone as planned, everybody's been happy and healthy at the end. So, maybe it's me praying to him, maybe it's not, but I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure that it's him. And so like, that too is just, it's a blessing.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you kinda pulled back the curtain a little bit and shared some of your testimony, and it's kinda stopping me in my tracks a little bit, because one of the messages that I feel like God has been teaching me recently and kind of brought up in a lot of different areas in my pastor's sermon last week. And then we were at a conference this weekend. So I feel like it was brought up there. And then in your testimony now. And then also with the 2-year-old age that Weston is at. It's just this idea that even in our disobedience, God provides for us. And if you go back to Genesis, after they ate from the tree and they realize that they're naked and they're ashamed, that God clothes them. Even though that they just did the one thing he told them not to do, like he provides clothes for them. Like, even in our disobedience, even though you were walking away from the church, he gave you that little one experience of seeing your sister be born that would be a catalyst for so many other things in your life. And I just, it humbles me. And that's the whole point, is that it makes us take a step back and be like, whoa, God, not whoa, me. Like, it's nothing that
Mhm.
I did. It's like, wow, I did the
Yeah.
opposite of what you told me to do. But yet here you are still providing for me. And that's the whole gospel, is that even in
Yes.
our sin, God still provides a way for us to be with him for eternity. So anyway, pause to share the gospel here for a minute. Emily, preach, why don't you? So
But
anyway,
it hit me like when I was going through this, I was like, I feel like
yeah,
it's important to share. And, like just thinking about, like you talked about how he still provides, like what kind of mother would I be today if I hadn't had those
yeah,
experiences, and how much
mm,
more devout it makes me because I did leave him. And he never, and I left him. He never obviously left
mm-hmm,
me, but
yeah,
how much more devout it makes me now, and how much more I see all of these little things in my life that he did. And, I get to, like, you talk about pulling the curtain back, and it's just like, every person that I've encountered along this journey, it's just incredible to think all the people that he's placed in my life to continue to push me along. And it's just really incredible when you stop and look at how the Holy Spirit works, and just everything in your life that it touches to encourage you, to push you, to make you come to him. It's really amazing. So yes, and I don't often get an opportunity in my line of work to really share.
mm-hmm,
I don't get a lot of Christian clients, and I don't think that it's, I talk about God with them. Whether or not they want me to do that, I do, but
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's part of it, right? And so
yeah,
it's always nice when I have clients that are devout and faithful to him. And my clients this past weekend were, and like just sharing that moment with her, I talked about where she was like, how can you see this and not believe in
yeah,
God? Like, those things are so beautiful, and I'm so grateful for that, because it's not often. I'm kind of a like unicorn in the birth work world, because it is kind of hard to find Christian doulas. They're popping up more. Like, I see more of it, but it's difficult, especially in the area that we live in. It's
of
not
course,
as many. Being conservative Christian doulas is not as
yeah,
common. And to each their own. That's not my
yeah,
space. I'm not the
yeah.
one that's going to be judging. And so I try to just be respectful of other people's opinions. But I'm so happy when I find my like little niche client, and I'm like, yay.
Well, and what a cool mission field for you. Like, I mean, we talk about that a lot too, just treating every job, whether it's motherhood or military for us, like we talk about treating every job as a mission field. But like for you, again, the undeniable aspect of birth, like being from God, even if they don't know that it's coming from God, like you know that every step of a physiological birth process is literally designed by God. And to be able to share that with them, even if it's not like totally preaching at them, you have a lot of influence in that vulnerable spot that they're in to really just highlight God's goodness.
And just being able to give them an opportunity, like you said, in a vulnerable spot, to like think about ways to raise your children,
Hmm.
and how you want to bring up
Yeah.
your children. And I have 3 sons, so it's very important to me that I raise godly men so that they can
Yeah.
lead their families. And so I think about that, and one of my little nuggets that I always drop on people is with vitamin K, and how vitamin K is naturally at the appropriate level by day 8.
Hmm.
And you don't necessarily
Hmm.
need that vitamin K injection. And if you look at the Bible, on day 8, that's when the circumcision was like, this is when you're going to
Hmm.
perform the circumcision. So it's not by accident that those things overlap. Do you really think that thousands of years ago they're doing testing on the vitamin K levels in a baby's body to determine that that was the safest time to do it? Like, no, God told them to, because he knew, and they followed. And so now, like, when I get a chance with my boy parents, I'm like, okay, well, like, if that's your choice, why don't you research when it's, high, you can go back later, you could hire a moil, and, day 8, just drop the little nuggets there for them to kind of go do their own research. But, God talks about it in the Bible, and day 8,
Yeah.
then just let them kind of run away with it. But I love, like, I've shared that with people who aren't in the birth work field, Christian friends of mine, and they're like, that is so cool,
Hmm.
because they don't know all of
Yeah.
the medical information to kind of like tie in the science and religion.
Right.
So those things are
Yeah.
really cool. It's a cool spot to be in. And it was scary for me at first to just be
Hmm.
so bold in
Hmm.
my faith, but I realized like there's no other way to be. So you either take
Yeah.
me or leave
No.
me. So if you don't want me to
No,
be your doula, then I'm not offended. We're just not a good fit.
yeah, no, I knew that I needed a Christian doula because again, I don't know how someone is in your line of work and doesn't like attribute this to some at least some greater power. Like
Right.
you got to know that it's not like in our control. But I knew that I wanted a Christian doula just because the spiritual side of it is so important to me in that surrender aspect. And so I just reached out on a Facebook group, a mom's Facebook group, and like whatever it takes to find it, like whether it's getting on your community Facebook group or asking other moms, I don't know, work hard to find that because it's definitely worth it. And then I also want to support those Christian doulas who are out there and make it more
Let's make it a
mainstream if we
thing.
can. But
And just like
yeah.
giving moms the opportunity to like find their faith, maybe like you're kind
Hmm.
of on the fence and this is going to be the catalyst like that like kickstarts your journey and like the sanctification. Like I just it's such an intense moment in your life and you are so malleable because you want to do all the things
Yeah.
right. And so I just
Yep.
think like definitely like I would love to connect with more Christian doulas and I have seen like a few pop up in some local Facebook groups and I'm pretty close with a local midwife and I do think like she and I have a really good thing as far as like how we're going to grow things and she is a little more conservative but it's hard to enter that field and be bold about that position. So I think it's time for people to be able to like talk about their faith and not be persecuted for it or not be able to get
Yeah.
work. And, I'm very
Right.
blessed because first and foremost, I'm a stay at home mom. So I am a doula because I'm passionate about it, not because I need to pay my bills. So I think I have a
Yeah.
little more freedom there because my husband takes care of us. And so I can
Hmm.
sit here and say,
Hmm.
like, oh, well, just stand your ground and it'll all work out because God does provide, but you also have to pay your mortgage. You want to just be
Hmm.
careful. Like, it's sad that it's like that, but I'm blessed. I don't advertise, and a lot of the clients that I get now are referrals from previous clients. And so I'm getting into that niche where I get to have all these Christian mamas and
Hmm.
share how we're going to raise our babies and talk
Yeah.
apologetics and all the fun things. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
Well, trust me, any military that's coming to the area that I know now, like I'll be pointing them right to you.
Yes. Love it. I love it. I love it. And we'll get them connected with a home birth midwife. We're just
Yeah,
going to feed them
exactly.
all of the things. Just,
Yes.
I
Yep.
call it drinking from a fire.
What are some misconceptions that you think women have about natural birth that you would like to correct? I know I have a few that I thought of that I want to share, but what are some that
Well,
you
why don't
have?
you go first? Because you might answer some of the things I was already going to say.
I feel like the biggest one, and I had a girl this weekend, it was because it was at a academy, so a college age retreat that I was at this weekend. She asked me, so be honest, she said, is birth like the worst thing in the world? Like, is it so painful? And I kind of like stopped for a minute. I was like I almost struggled to answer the question because yes, it's intense. It's a lot. Like it's intense. But when I experience the way that it's supposed to go, I don't look at that experience and just like, oh my gosh, that was the worst, like most painful thing in my life. Like, I think the misconception that I had and that a lot of women have is that if you choose to have a natural birth, then you're choosing like grit and you're choosing to have to like power through it and bear down and like I don't know, like I see reels on Instagram where it's like me after my epidural birth and me after my natural birth and one's like super disheveled and then the other's like,
All
perfectly
sweaty
put
and their
together.
hair's
And like so I see that and I get that because it is work. But
yes.
also I like pain is not the word that comes to mind. And I that fear tension pain cycle, when you avoid the fear, like, I don't look back at it and even in the moment, like, I don't think I ever stopped. I don't know that I ever had "I can't do this" moment in my natural birth, but I definitely did when I had the interventions because I was working against my body's natural design. Yeah, like you're talking about, I had the Pitocin, but it's not hitting up here. So when I answered that question to her, I said, it is intense, but it wasn't painful. So that's one of my misconceptions that came to mind that I had that I want to preach to women. Like it's not like the movies, like you mentioned earlier.
One that the midwife friend that I mentioned, she always goes, they don't call it labor for nothing. Like you are working
Right.
and it's hard
Yeah.
work, but it for good reason. God's not
Yeah.
going to bless you with this gift just so that you can and be done with it. Like it there's a reason that it's the process that it is. And I think going back to the spiritual thing, like it needs to be, because you need to realize like the magnitude of what is happening. And being an active participant in that, obviously you're not taking the wheel, but if you are an active participant in that with your baby, it is just such an amazing experience. So intense, but I don't look back either and think, oh, that's painful. And I've had two pretty big babies. My oldest was 7 pounds, 1 ounce, had him at that birthing center, like lickety split. I was like, oh, okay. But I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm never doing that again. Had my first home birth and we jumped to 10 pounds, 9 ounces. I don't know where he came
Mm-hmm.
from, but now I think that's my normal because my third was 9, 12. But he actually got a little
Mm-hmm.
stuck. Not a shoulder baby, but he was just so big and broad. And I'm not a big person, but I'd
Yeah.
already had one baby paved the way, so we weren't super concerned. And he didn't come out quite
Mm-hmm.
far enough. So I had to hobble out of the tub with his head between my legs and then birth him the rest of the way on the bed. And I remember telling people this, and they're like, oh, isn't that awful? Wouldn't you just rather have the 7 pound baby? I was like, nah, that 10 pound, 9 ounce baby, he is my blue ribbon baby. I worked for him, but I never remember thinking, even in the moments where like the midwives were definitely like, we got to get this kid out of here. I was never panicked.
Yeah.
It was so
Right.
intense, but I was like, well, if I tear, I tear, whatever. I didn't. By the grace of
Yeah.
God, I have never had to even had a stitch. But like,
It's crazy.
I remember thinking, yeah, with the 10 pound, 9 ounce kid, everybody's like, but it was just like absolutely like, I almost want to say blissful, just because I got to
Yeah.
experience every single part of it. And I got to experience every part
Mm-hmm.
with my baby. Like, you get an epidural, not poo pooing epidural moms. A lot of women in my family have had epidurals, but you get an epidural, your baby's still feeling everything and they're experiencing everything. And you're just hanging out. And, you know, the drug that they often use in an epidural is fentanyl. And a lot of people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that stuff anywhere near my body, let alone near my body when I have a baby inside of me. So, and I know like the science they say, but I'm just like, why would we ever even want to risk it? Right. And so I don't think that like, and again, I'm not anti epidural. It's just, it wasn't for me. I wanted to feel it with him. And I say him because I have 3 boys, but I wanted to feel it with him. And I think that's another thing too. There's a big disconnect with the mother baby dyad in modern times, especially in like US culture and even like the East
Yep.
Coast culture. Busy, busy, busy. Let me get back to work. It's got to be on my terms, not baby's terms. All these moms, you know, either have to
Yeah.
work or feel expected to work. And instead of just being present with your baby, you're thinking about a million other things. And that's not the way that it
Yeah.
was intended to be. And it's sad that it's like that. But I was so fortunate to have the husband that I have through these births. And, you know, now as we're in this next phase of parenthood, to be able to just enjoy my kids and to enjoy being a mother and being a woman with a family. And I'm like, obviously, like I digress, but like I just think like so many
Yeah.
people have this, and I say people because it's families, men, women, but mamas just feel this, they're pulled too many directions. And instead of being able to get lost in this moment with their bodies and their baby during birth, they're just already on to the next thing. Well, what am I going to do
Yeah.
about when I go back to work? And who's going to watch the baby because we need daycare? And who's going to keep my house clean? And who's going to just enjoy it? You know? And I'm
Yeah.
sure I said this to you, like, you're a kangaroo, you know? You give birth, but that baby literally cannot survive without you, and it should be attached to you at all times. If you want a good breastfeeding experience and you want a successful breastfeeding experience and a happy baby and like an emotionally regulated, thriving infant, skin to skin. That baby will
Yep.
live on your body, and that's the way that it was intended to be. So it's
Yeah.
just going back to your original question, like misconceptions, like that being one of them, that they need to try to live in both worlds, I think is a sad reality for a lot of people
Yes.
nowadays, that they're
Yeah.
affordability. I mean, like both people generally have to work. But also I feel like a lot of women just think they can't do it. Like, oh, I'm not strong enough for
Yeah.
that, or I don't know how you could do that. Like, we as women are so much stronger than we ever give ourselves credit for, like physically
Mm-hmm.
stronger. And, you know, like a midwife friend of mine always says, like, you can do hard things. Like, she says this to her clients because you're going to have to do hard things when you become a mother. So what
Yeah.
better way to prepare yourself for that than in pregnancy and childbirth? And so like, it's such a
Yeah.
simple phrase, but it's just so true across the board. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, I think like Hollywood theme that they have going on with childbirth, and like, you know, like Handmaid's Tale, she's alone in a house screaming bloody murder, like pushing this baby out. She's fearful, rightfully so. They're going to take her
Mhm.
child. She's completely alone. That's a realistic depiction of
Yeah.
somebody who's having like a, fear-based birth. But like
Mhm.
knocked up. Not the most wholesome movie, but like just another example of a
Mhm.
birth where she's like screaming at everyone. And Seth Rogen's got to go like play, referee with her sister and threaten to kick her out. It's like you have your partner there. You have a provider who's listening to you. You have a partner who's leading. He sticks up for her and she's still just losing her ever loving mind. It's like, they got some of it right, like with the
Mhm.
man just kind of
Yeah.
taking the lead, but then they just leave out so many other important parts. And the juice is always worth the squeeze. The juice is always worth the squeeze. Like, yes, it's hard, intense. It might even at times be painful. Like, there
Mhm.
are certain aspects of it you're like, oh, that doesn't feel so great. But it is always worth it. Like, always
Yeah.
worth it. You're
Yeah.
there, if you're going to be a good mother, you're going to find the beauty in it and it's going to be worth it. And so I just
Mhm.
think like that, feeling all the things your baby feels and just experiencing the power that comes with surrendering to your body during childbirth. It's divine, like I said earlier. And I think you're just going to be so proud of yourself when you get to the other side. Like to be able to say, I did that. And, I could do it again and again and again. Like there will be a point in life where you're probably like, yeah, I don't think I could do that anymore. But like right now, when you're in this era, like you're just going to be so proud of yourself when you cross that finish line with your baby in your arms. And like you can do it. And you have to have faith in yourself and faith in the God that wanted you to be the one to do it.
Mhm. Mhm. You said so many amazing things right there, but just that message that hard is not the same thing as bad, I think is my biggest takeaway. You mentioned just that birth is just the beginning, all of motherhood. It requires a lot out of you, but that has been the best thing for me is just laying myself down and realizing that when I get out of the way and just surrender, that same idea of surrender to my role as a mother and surrender to allowing God's grace to work through me, like that's all of motherhood. It's not just birth.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop there.
It's so true. And I do think too, like just motherhood in general, like where you're, especially being a Christian woman, like you're supposed to do everything like gleefully and pour into your family and submit to your husband and do all these things. And like sometimes I think it can be a struggle to do that. And like being a stay-at-home mom is not an easy job by any means. And you get up and you're constantly doing for others and you're kind of putting yourself on the back burner. But if you like flip the script and you look at what a blessing it is to be able to do those things, like what a blessing it is to be able to pour into your children and your family, and a blessing to be able to pour into a husband who adores you and provides for you and leads you. When you do them with joy in your heart and you understand like what a gift it is to be able to do those things, it can change your perspective, but you have to stay in his word to really feel that. Like I think it's easy to sometimes lose sight of that because motherhood is hard and you're doing a lot of hard things and you do have to make sacrifices, but they're worthy sacrifices. And, being grateful to be able to be a part of everything. It's just it's such a gift. It really is. I mean, I there's just no other way to really describe like how grateful I am to be a woman and to be able to have experienced childbirth 3 times, to nurse babies. Like I've been nursing pretty much for 6.5 years. I've had very little breaks
Mhm.
because I breastfed all of my kids into pregnancy. And it's just like, I look at like my body has been producing food and kept humans alive. Like it's incredible. It's just so amazing. And like, yes, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. You're not
Yeah,
going
I
to
felt
look
very
back.
humbled.
Yeah, when you're not going to look back when you're 80 at your legacy. That is your legacy. I will never look back when my kids are grown and be like, man, I wish I hadn't nursed them so long. Man, I wish I had gone in and had a C-section. Like you will not regret these things. Like you are going to be so happy that you tried. And if you do end up the C-section mama, but you had a TOLAC, which or what trial of labor after cesarean is a VBAC thing. But if you have a trial of labor, you are going to be so happy that you at least tried. You won't have regrets. And like I think that's just a big part of it too, is like really surrendering to it so that you don't feel regretful that you didn't do something differently, because our window of opportunity to have babies can be so small. To really experience and just devour this stage of our lives. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. So if there's a young girl right now in high school or college who is really excited for that stage of life, who can't wait to enter into the motherhood era of her life and experience all the things that we're talking about, what are some things right now that she can do, ways that she can prepare her body, mind, and her spirit for this stage of life, for pregnancy and childbirth?
Well, step one, consider everything that you're putting into your body. It all has an
Yep.
impact, right? So, like I was a 15-year birth control user and it wreaked havoc on my body's ability to regulate. And it took me 18 months to get pregnant with my oldest. And I didn't realize like how hard that would be on me to feel like my body was letting me down. And I'm not saying that that's a guarantee. Some people go off birth control and it happens right away, but it does have an impact. Your nutrition. Do you exercise? How are you treating your body? Like, are you using your body as a tool for good, or are you, running her ragged? And I feel like you want to make sure that you think about the long-term implications of like the things that you're doing. I did not make the right choices for myself when I was younger. I turned my back on God and I did all of the foolish, like teenage things that a girl can do. And I feel like being mindful of that and just like your body is sacred and treat her as such, right? But then things that I wish I had known when I was younger, like pelvic floor physical therapy.
Oh
I
yeah.
had all of these issues with my body when I was like early, like mid to late teenage years, early 20s too. But that I was like, it's painful during sex. I'm peeing my pants. Like I was in college and couldn't make it to the bathroom and I would like pee my pants. I'm like, this is insane. Chronic UTIs, painful. It was painful for me to poop. And I like all of this stuff. I had hemorrhoids as a 19-year-old girl. And I'm like, what is
Mhm.
going on? It's all tied to a hypertonic pelvic floor. And no one in all the years I saw all these specialists said a word to me. They thought I had Crohn's disease and like all this crazy stuff. I go to my very first midwife appointment, pregnant with my oldest. She's like, okay, well, you should go see a pelvic floor physical therapist. And I was like, that's a thing? Like, just like,
Yep.
okay. So, but the
Yeah.
disconnect and, to fast forward in, late adulthood and our senior stage of life, a lot of people end up in nursing homes due to incontinence issues and urinary issues. It's sad to think that a lot of those problems could have been resolved had these people had proper pelvic floor health and care. So, pelvic floor physical therapy, see a chiropractor, get your body in alignment. It communicates better that way. All of these things and continue that into pregnancy when it does come time for you to have a baby. I love my acupuncturist. She's actually the reason I found out what a doula was. Because I'll be honest,
Mm.
I didn't know what a doula was when I got pregnant with my oldest. Like I'd heard the term, but I was not familiar. And so, talking about ways God guides you, I've had more spiritual conversations with my acupuncturist in the last 6.5 years than probably anyone else in my life. It wasn't until
Mm.
recently that I literally saw her once a month, but she did such incredible things for me to, help my body kind of get back to a normal, like a baseline. And, just the mind, like you're prepping your mind. So, like, read books and really read books. Like, I'm a big fan of like old school, pick up a paperback book and like just dive into it. Like, read books about, you know, God and read books about your body and get to know what it does and, what's going to help you to be healthy and to have the kind of life that you envision. And, invest in a daily devotional, like from the spiritual aspect, pray. And, if you're pregnant, find a Bible study that's geared towards expectant mothers and like just find a way every day to connect with God. And, when it comes time, just remember that like He gave you this authority over this child and your children on earth because He entrusted you and He believes that you are the best mother for him or her. And so just keeping those things in mind as you move forward, just you're laying the foundation for your future. And so if you're young and you're thinking about what that next phase of your life looks like, just think about how much easier it will be to continue doing something than it will be to start doing something new. If you started these things in your late teens, early 20s, it's going to make it exponentially simpler to implement them in your life as a wife and mother, because they'll already be
No, that is all
habits.
so good. Yeah. I know a lot of people love the practical, the tangible, like tell me what to do advice. And so that's all going to be really helpful for our listeners and all things, yes, that I definitely wish that I knew and that my daughter, now that I have a daughter, will know way earlier than I did, especially the pelvic floor physical therapy, because I mean, really, especially all of it, because it's all important. But
Yeah, but
that's
it's
the one
like
right now
that
that's really,
specifically is just like mind blowing. Just like my
yeah.
my grandmother's in her 80s. I'm just like, you would benefit so greatly from pelvic floor physical therapy. And she just refuses because she's at a point in her life where that's more work than it's worth to her. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
had you known
Yeah.
about this, she had 5 kids. Had you known about this, 60 years ago, 65 years ago when her oldest was born, like it would be so much simpler for you. So definitely, definitely worth just, and it's hard. Things are expensive, but you know,
Hmm.
doulas and midwives sometimes offer like preconception care. So if you are at a phase in your life where you're considering having a baby, or maybe you just want to find like a good integrative doctor who's going to be able to help you look through where you are in life, they might have resources for you that like you didn't know were out there, and it would be much more attainable than you realize, because I have
Hmm.
found some incredible free resources for my clients because I serve Medicaid. So like I have to find them free things. I can't send them to, an IBCLC who charges $100 an hour because they don't have that money. So when you find a community and a network of people, I'm like, get in with some women, like go to a Bible study. They're usually multi-generational. If you get in with women's ministry at your church, it's multi-generational, and there's so much sage advice in that room, and you're
Yeah.
going to share with them about all the phases of life. And it's just so nice to have that support. And they will have resources for you because they're going to be local and they're going to have been where you were, and hopefully be able to share some of that knowledge.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that is all so good. So wise. Thank you for sharing that. And then could you also tie in for people who are either married and thinking about their choices for birth or not married yet and thinking about what they're looking for in a future spouse? Can you just tie in the husband's role in pregnancy, birth, motherhood?
So I love thinking about this. Like, I was so happy you put this question on here because, like, my husband, like, he's been so supportive of me. Like, if you met my husband, he is a carpenter by trade. He's in that construction world, self employed. And if you saw him, you would never expect him to be the man that he is to me when I'm pregnant, and especially when I'm in labor. He actually got nicknamed the Doodla by my midwives last time because they
That's
were like,
awesome.
he's just so like, he is so calm, and he brings so much strength to me, but he's so calm in the
Hmm.
process. And so like he just blows me away in childbirth, and like I would not make it through without him. So I just think about, like, had I known what 25-year-old me when I met him, had I known that this was where we were going to be, like, you could never have convinced me. Like, I would have never envisioned that. And so I do think that, like, when it comes time to pick a partner in life, sometimes God's going to just give you the nudge you need to get you where you need to be. And you're not going to realize, like, how perfect this person is for you until stuff like that happens. Right. And so trusting in God. And when I met him, I was not saved. Like, I was almost the complete opposite. And so I just think about how grateful I am that God placed him in my life. But I also think, like, now being a Christian woman and having a husband like that, like, I think about Ephesians 5, right? And people like to take that out of context and, like, wives, submit to your husband, but they never get to the part where it talks about, and I'm going to read it because I actually copied and pasted it for myself. I'm not that good. I don't know by heart. But in this same way,
Hmm.
husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body just as Christ does the church. And that is such a beautiful, like, testament to what, like, an equal marriage like looks like. Like, you are submitting to your husband and caring for him, but look at what he's also doing for you. And that was my husband.
Yeah.
It makes me emotional. In pregnancy and
Mm.
childbirth, as I was very much an alpha, like, always, like, felt like I was going to wear the pants. Like, that was me before I found God again. And now I'm like, I just want to be this feminine little creature, and I want him to make the decisions and lead me. And, like, he does exactly that. So I think when you're young and you're looking, remember, one, you're a mirror. So whatever you are is going to be what you attract. And I think that being mindful of that as you make choices in your youth is so important, because I definitely attracted the wrong type of people when I was younger. And I'm so grateful that I did find my husband when I did. But I think like finding a man that wants to be a husband and a father and wants to be a husband to you first and foremost and wants to lead and like really the type of man who's going to want to lead you in prayer and pour over you and trust, like pour into you and just trust you as you're on this walk with the Lord, because God has already told her what she needs to do, right? Like the Holy Spirit is guiding mama, and God has already just kind of put his hand on her. And, intuitively, she's going to be doing what's needed if she's listening to him. And like my husband just never doubted my judgment. He trusted that I was making these choices, faith in me as his wife. And I think you want to look for somebody who supports you and who will lead you and who will, love you in every sense of the word, but is also honest with you, when it's time to like, hey, we need to reconsider this. Like the birth I was just at, the husband was like, we need a minute and we're going to talk this through, just the two of us, when some changes came up, because those hard moments in life, you're going to want a man who knows you and knows when he needs to take charge to help get you through and be able to be your voice when you need to kind of retreat. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not you being submissive in the sense that you can't speak for yourself. It's knowing that you married this man to protect you in every sense of the word. So
Mm-hmm.
those are hard things to consider when you're young. But think about how much better off like we would all be if that's how we led our lives, right? Like in our teens and early 20s, if that's what we were doing, like just society as a whole would probably just be so much better for it. Not probably, they would.
Yes. Yeah, they would be. Wow, Emily, you're such a wellspring of knowledge, and it really ties in perfectly because this month we were talking all about mission on the podcast, and next month we're actually talking about relationships and marriage as a whole. And so it literally you're the last episode in our January series, and it's tying so perfectly into February. And just a few last thoughts for me. As I shared in my birth story episode on the podcast, both with my son's birth and my daughter's most recently, in both, God's hand was unmistakably present. I can look back at both experiences and just clearly see how he wove everything together for my good and for his glory. But the second time around, something was very different. By learning more about how God designed our bodies, by caring for myself more intentionally during pregnancy, by preparing for birth, and then most importantly, by focusing on surrender, the theme that you and I talked about so often for those months, the whole experience was far more peaceful. I wasn't afraid. I felt held, guided, and steady. And I think that so deeply connects to life as a whole. And you've even alluded to it with your story about how you walked away and then coming back. You feel this way too. We can't derail God's plans. No decision that we make, no preparation that we attempt, no skill we acquire, like none of that can undo what he has ordained for us or separate us from his love. Because of Jesus, because of grace, it simply doesn't work that way. But when we align ourselves with his design and when we stay sensitive to the Holy Spirit and when we root ourselves in his word, we begin to experience that same peace in everyday life. Not because everything turns out perfectly. God tells us plainly that we will face trouble, but because we learn to trust the one who holds every single moment. And just like preparing for a natural birth doesn't guarantee a certain outcome, preparing your heart and life doesn't guarantee ease, but a strong relationship with Jesus and a posture full of surrender, that's what allows us to walk through anything, birth and beyond, without fear, experiencing that peace that they talk about that truly surpasses understanding. And I feel like, Emily, you did such a good job in this episode, not only talking about birth and talking about your role as a doula and all that, all the logistics stuff, all the practical advice, but you tied it back to the gospel. And I'm really thankful for that. Now I'm going to get emotional because I'm really thankful for you. I remember the moment that Haven came out, I was experiencing all the blissful things that we've talked about, but also I was just so thankful. I felt like in that moment that both the Lord and you and the midwives, I felt like it was a gift that was given to me. Like your role in the birth was just, it was a gift. And I felt so immensely grateful. Um, to have experienced it that way with you guys. And I'm also just like really sad that I am going to be moving. Probably won't won't have another birth in this town, but like I'll definitely be referring you to all my friends, and like I don't know, maybe I'll want you to fly out for my birth, if I get desperate. If
There's
I
a
can get
first
you to like
time for
fly across the
everything,
country.
Erin. First time for everything.
But and thanks for taking time to talk on a podcast too, late on a Tuesday night, because we're both moms and got to coordinate the
Hey,
timing with
it
little
worked out
kids.
though. My house is very quiet. I didn't get interrupted one time. I'm not sweating profusely because somebody's calling for me that they need their butt wiped. That's just, motherhood. And I do want to say this real quick
Yeah.
because you touched on like it being a gift. And I just want to acknowledge that like it was a gift for you, but it was also a gift for me because I just think like what an honor it is that you chose me to be your doula. And, it's just, I feel so blessed and like I don't know what I did right in life to be able to like have people welcome me into that space. I'm a little hard on myself sometimes that grace that I didn't acknowledge for a long time. I'm playing catch up. But I just feel so grateful. And so being able to be in your birth space, like it felt like a gift to you, but it felt like a gift to me too. And I just think like I remember that moment vividly when you're laying in bed with her on your chest and the windows open and it's like rainy, but it's sunny. And it was like the
Sunny.
perfect temperature on a November day. And like, just what a beautiful morning. Like, you get up and you pray as the sun rises sometimes, like, because I try to do that, just like worship him and really show my gratitude for this glorious day. But that was a glorious day. Like, what a way to welcome a baby into this world. So like it was a gift for me too. And I just hope you know that like I appreciate you letting me have that with you because it was wonderful. And you were an absolute rock star. Like incredible. Incredible. So again, like you can do it. Like I like think flashback to like when you had your son and you have this beautiful baby girl now. And it's like when Weston was born, did you ever imagine that you would have been there with Haven? Like, you know what I mean? Like you probably could never have imagined that it would be so different and could be, and like how strong you were and overcoming all of those things and just like never saw yourself short. And like you are so strong in your faith and it shows. And it was beautiful to be able to work alongside you and to have an opportunity to do something like this. Like this is just so cool. And who it might reach and whose life it might impact because you were willing to go out and do this. Like it's just like you are an incredible person and your children and your husband are just so blessed to have you. And I'm grateful that we cross paths, and it is sad that you will probably be leaving the state, but we will make the most of the time we have while we're still in
Mm-hmm.
Maryland together. Maybe one day I won't be in Maryland anymore. Not gonna lie, it's
Yeah,
not
we'll
my
see.
favorite place to be, but my whole family is here. So I'm just gonna
And family as priorities.
yes, yes. I mean, you
Well,
heard how
thank you
big
so
it
much,
is.
Emily.
You're
Yeah,
very
yeah,
welcome. Very, very welcome. And, this is awesome. I can't wait to hear the next episode. I want to see how you tie in the marriage aspect of it. I'm going to be listening, eagerly
yeah.
waiting.
I'm excited and thankful that I mean, all of this, your story, my story, we can call it that, but like all of it tied together is God's story. And it's so encouraging when people don't have to claim their stories when they know that it's his and are willing to just tell it as such. And I hope that all of you listening out there will do the same thing, that you'll take whatever you're going through and surrender it to the Lord and just be willing to see how he's working every single day of your life, to be able to wake up every morning and just look for him, whether it's a beautiful November day or a not so much, kind of gloomy day in January. So we hope that you all enjoy this episode. If you did, make sure that you follow along to hear our relationship series as we're jumping into February. And thank you again, Emily, for joining us. This has been Erin and Emily helping you mind your mission.